Yeah, Hotline Live exclusive. A real strange one, this. And a bit of a blow, in fact, a serious blow potentially, at least to Russell Martin. Given that obviously Rangers found out today Panathinaikos will be their opponents, which is, as we were discussing last night, probably the worst possible draw they could have got at the first stage of these Champions League qualifiers. It's a real strange one. John Souttar, who is by far and away the best central defender that they've got, Russell Martin has currently got at his disposal, played for Scotland obviously against Iceland last Friday night, then makes the trip to Liechtenstein, sits on the bench, unused sub for that. But apparently he was in need of a hernia operation, which you would have expected, given the circumstances and how important he is, that would have happened after the end of the domestic season, back in May 17th, I think they played Hibs. But the medical department, for whatever reason, best known to themselves, maybe, I don't know if John Souttar was desperate to play for Scotland, but they delayed the op. So I believe he had the operation in London last week. I believe that he's currently rehabbing in Portugal, but he's right up against it in terms of the medical experts that I've spoken to say this is a kind of 4 week to 6 week process in order to be ready to play. 4 weeks to get yourself back to ready to train, and then a couple of weeks to get in shape to be match fit. 6 weeks, Rangers will get 5 weeks until they play Panathinaikos. So, you hope for John Souttar's sake that he doesn't have any complications, there's no issues. But even if there's not, it's going to be really tight. And Rangers don't have a plethora of options at centre-back. Leon Balogun and John Souttar would have been first choice towards the end of last season, I think, recognised by just about everyone. And then after that, you've got Robin Propper, who, I don't think he can get back to Holland quick enough, and understandably so. I think terms are just about being agreed, I think, with FC20. So we would expect that he'll be one of the ones on the way out, which narrows down your options even further. Clinton Enciala, difficult first season, young player, inexperienced, 21-year-old. And then after that, you've got Ben Davies and Leon King, who were out on loan last season. So I would imagine that Russell Martin's probably asking a few questions as to how this was allowed to happen. Meanwhile, desperately keeping his fingers crossed that John Souttar's going to complete his recuperation and recovery and be fit in time for the visit of the Greeks. And when is that? The 23rd of July? So it's really time urgent. It's really time urgent, and I'm incredibly surprised that Rangers have allowed themselves to be in that position, Daniel.
Well, comments are coming in already on this. If you want to get involved in the conversation, please do so. John echoes your sentiments, Keith. He says, who on earth made that decision to allow Souttar to play for Scotland with that injury? If he doesn't make the Panathinaikos game, who plays centre-back? And along with that, Rangers, is he okay? Isn't happy. He says, Souttar's another one. If a bid came in, he has a year left in his deal, I would let go, especially if he wants to prioritise playing dead rubbers with Scotland over getting himself fully fit for us. It does seem really weird, Mick, that two friendlies with Scotland kind of was put ahead of the Champions League qualifiers.
I would get back even further. I mean, I don't know when it was discovered, but I think that's because of the question. When did they find out they would require some kind of surgery in the season? Because Rangers' season finished on April 17th. That's when they were put out by Atletico Bilbao from Europe. That's when the season was finished. The rest of the game didn't matter. Not a jot. So as soon as that was discovered, it should be a regular operation at that point. As soon as
I'm not sure it was known at that point, Mick.
No, but at some point after that, it was flagged up. I mean, as soon as that's flagged up, it should be taken out the firing line and getting fixed because the season was finished. And as for the Scotland games, I mean, two of the most meaningless friendlies you'll ever clap your eyes on.
Iceland and Liddell.
Genuine. Iceland and Dog and Duck. I mean, an absolute waste of time for everybody concerned, especially guys who have got, dozens of caps and we know what they can do.
Yeah.
So it does seem a little bit of a silly gamble to take. Listen, he might come back. He might be. He's used to it. He can come back quite sharp and just about make it. But he's cutting a hell of a fine for this qualifier, which is going to be
and Mick, of all the players that Rangers have got, and he is, I think, one of their stalwarts, Big John Souttar.
Yeah.
But he has got this back catalogue of injury issues, and he's never really been able to get fully clear with it. Recently, he's done really well, but there's another little thing, and you should be wrapping a guy like him up in cotton wool.
Yeah.
I wonder, I think what's happened here, my reading of this situation would be, I think there was a real vacuum at Rangers towards the end of the season. They played Hibs on the Saturday. They kind of made it a public announcement on the Sunday that Barry Ferguson wouldn't be any further involved in the process to recruit a new manager. Therefore, they didn't have a manager. They were managerless from that period, from that Sunday. I believe that the doctor at the club, a really experienced doctor, I think he came from Liverpool, I think Stephen Gerrard might have brought him up. Well, I believe that he is also retiring this summer, so was in the final days of his contract. So that you don't have a manager to ask the question or to tell the player, look, forget about Scotland. You'll need to go and have that op. You don't have a doctor to make that decision. You don't have a director of football because Kevin Thelwell wasn't in the building at that period. So who made the decision? So you would have to look at someone that was left in charge of the medical department must have said, yeah, we'll go with that. Whoever that was might have some serious explaining to do to Russell Martin right now, I would imagine.
Aye. In the comment section, Ghostwriter agrees with you, Mick. He says, exactly, our league campaign was long gone before the actual finish. Surely a guy prone to injury wouldn't choose to play on injured. John says, Souttar out injured, Kel Surprise not. Rangers Easy OK says, if I was Russell Martin, I'd get in the blower to Mr. Thelwell, telling him to get a bid in for Connor Cody pronto. We need 2 centre-halves to start this summer. We arguably now need 3. It's a fair point, Keith, because you listed it out there a minute ago yourself. I mean, with no disrespect to him at all, but you're down to like Leon King and Ben Davies, who, again, with no disrespect, they're not the answer for Rangers.
Well, it's already been decided that they're not the answer, which is why, you know, Ben Davies was sent on loan to Birmingham. Ben Davies is capable. He's a capable player and he's an experienced player, but he's not the future.
Aye.
And he's not a guy that Rangers clearly feel that they can depend upon, certainly for a match of this sort of significance and importance this early in the summer. Look, everything I've just said there in terms of what the available options would be, I guess people would say, well, Dujon Sterling, if he's fit and ready. But again, there's so many questions about, you know, his physical conditioning. James Tavernier has shown that he could slot in, but you don't want to be going in with patchwork centre defence for a match which could be, you know, potentially £60 million plus riding on it.
Aye.
And I think what I must also caveat the whole thing by saying is we're talking about at this stage what would be available. And I'm perfectly sure that Russell Martin, although it's interesting that the head coach title does suggest that Russell Martin will now be could now be a hostage to fate in terms of what the recruitment department does. And he might be having to turn on Auchenhowie every day just hoping that a taxi turns up with a couple of centre-halves in it. Meanwhile, on the phone to John Souttar every day, finding out how's your progress, big man. It's a far from ideal set of circumstances, which I think has been spawned from a far from ideal set of circumstances. Where, as I said, it feels like there's this vacuum towards the end of last season, and I think this is just a really curious decision. Curious decision to make.
The only thing is, I don't think it changes anything. I think he needed 2 centre backs in regardless. But what this does, it means he has to expedite both of them rather than buying in one now and waiting till the window goes on, see it picks up. You now need to get in 2 pronto. I think that's it doesn't change the amount of players needing that position. I think it now just changes when they bring them in.
And you and I, Mick, know that it's really difficult.
Unfortunately, Souttar, you cannot hang the hat on him for the season, and you just can't. And listen, we all know him pretty well. We know he's a cracking big player. He just hasn't stayed fit all through his career.
Yeah,
you're not going to get 55 games out of him for the season. So then that's a position you had to buy 2 players for anyway.
I think, Mick, I was looking back at his stats. I think he's had 68 appearances over 3 seasons at Rangers. So that tells you about
par for the course, yeah.